Hi, Sean here from Hygeia Strength and Conditioning, and in this video, I'll be sharing how you can recognize when your deadlift setup is in the optimal position. At Hygeia, we teach the deadlift using the 5-step method. By following these 5 steps, our clients are set up in a position that allows the bar to be deadlifted in the most efficient way possible, in the vertical line directly over their center of gravity. While this method is a concise and effective way to teach anyone how to deadlift efficiently, I've noticed a number of lifters having issues recognizing whether or not they're in the correct pulling position. This happens just before the bar is pulled off the floor between the 4th and 5th step. But before we get into that, let's run through the 5 steps. Step 1. With your feet about hip width apart, approach the bar and set your feet so that your shins are 1 inch away from the barbell. Once you're in position, pivoting from your heel, point your toes out about 10 degrees. When you're getting into position, be sure to maintain vertical shins. One issue I've seen new lifters do every now and again is that when they're looking down at their feet while setting up, they're leaning forward and at the same time pushing their hips back, which in turn causes their shins to be tilted backwards. Setting up with your shins tilted backwards will cause the bar to be way too close when you get back upright. Step 2. Without bending your knees, grip the bar just outside of your feet while taking care to not move the bar. Step 3. Without moving the bar, bend your knees and push them forward while dropping your hips. Keep bending your knees till your shins contact the bar. Once your shins contact the bar, stop and hold that position. Next, shove your knees out so that they contact your arms and are parallel to your toes. Step 4. While keeping the hip at the same height and staying on your midfoot, set your back by squeezing your chest up and extending your lumbar spine while taking care to not move the bar. While different lifters have different preferences, I tend to get my lifters to take a breath first before they set their back, because I've observed some lifters, after they've set their back, as they take the breath, they allow their back to flex slightly and then not tightening it again before pulling the bar off the floor. Now on the flip side, there are some lifters that find it hard to hold the breath for extended periods of time, especially as the set progresses and they're getting knackered. But you can try and see which one you prefer. Apart from some lifters having issues setting their back in extension, this position, just before the bar is being pulled off the floor, is where I've observed a number of lifters struggle with. Are the hips too high, too low, or just right? Before I elaborate more on this, let's go through the 5th step before I come back and discuss this in more detail. Step 5. Drag the bar up your legs, maintaining contact throughout till you get to the lockout. Thereafter, reverse the movement and bring the bar back down to the floor. So that's the 5-step deadlift method. Let's go back to our issue of being able to tell if your hip height is set correctly. While setting up your hips at the correct height can be solved by following the 5-step method, some lifters unknowingly drop their hips too much and do not realize that their shins are already pushing the bar forward. This problem usually gets more pronounced as the set progresses, when the bar gets pushed forward off the midfoot and hips drop way too low. Now, hips can sometimes be set too high, but that does not happen nearly as often as the hips being set too low, so I won't be talking about that in this video. If the bar and hip are not in the correct position after each rep, this means adjustments have to be made to set up correctly for the next rep. The issue with the hips are that they are hanging around in the air and there are no markers to tell if your hips are at the optimal height. Standing up correctly can be easily cued if you have a coach standing next to you. However, if you're training on your own, it might not be so easy to perceive whether you're in the correct position or not. So what can you do to make sure you're set up correctly for your next rep? If you can have these 3 reminders checked off before you pull, you can be sure that you'll be in the optimal position. Number 1. The bar must be contacting the shins. If the bar gets away from you during the descent, pull it back in so that it stays in contact with your shins. Number 2. You must be on your midfoot. If you get pulled forward when the bar is descending, rock back till your weight is over your midfoot. If you're a lifter that finds it tricky identifying where the middle of your foot is, spend a bit of time when you're not deadlifting practicing finding your midfoot. Rock back and forth, and feel your weight shift between your toes and your heels. This should give you more awareness of the feedback coming from your feet. As you're rocking back and forth, identify the feeling whereby the weight is directly smack over your midfoot. Learn to recognize this and how it feels so that you'll know when you're in the correct position. Number 3. The lateral portion of your knee will be contacting your arm. What you want to achieve is for your knee to cover half of your arm. If the knees are contacting too far back, the hips will be too high. If the knees are too far forward, your hips will be too low. For the vast majority of lifters, getting these 3 things in place would set you up in the optimal pulling position. So to recap what I've just talked about, you want to ensure that you have these 3 reminders checked off when you're setting up for your deadlift. Number 1, the bar must be contacting your shins. Number 2, you must be on your midfoot. And number 3, the lateral portion of your knee will be contacting and covering half of your arm. I hope you found this video beneficial. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.